So welcome everybody. My name's Amy. I'm a member of the Community of Living Traditions at Stony Point Center. And yeah, as we were just chatting about, we've been having these sessions every week since the pandemic began. We've been calling them Living into a New Normal, as we sort of played around with, everybody kind of being forced into a new normal. We were trying to find our agency with reference to that experience. Not that. And so we thought we would just take this opportunity when we weren't able to gather in real space as much, to gather online on a regular basis and really try to explore what it was sort of becoming sort of revealed, disclosed by the pandemic. As you all know, that those revelations have intensified in the past few months with the Black Lives Matter uprisings. And it really is time for us all to be doing reckonings. So this community has been trying to do that intentionally, as so many people across our country have. And today we're going to be exploring the theme of living into a new normal through engaging in abolitionist organizing, the living tradition of abolitionist organizing. And we've got our friends and our partners from the Truth Telling Project who are going to lead us in a discussion about the current call to defund and reimagine policing in this country. And so with that, I'm going to turn it over to David Ragland, who's my fellow member of the Community of Living Traditions and also a board member of the Truth Telling Project.
Hey, I'm so glad that you all are here. Maybe let's take a minute to in our names, if you run your cursor over your name, to change our pronouns. And I am on the call, like many of us here, from Stony Point, which was traditionally Ramapo Lenape land. And I think it's important to honor the indigenous caretakers of the land before settler colonialism. And this country, this system was created. So if we can all, for a minute, just begin typing whose land are we on, as an acknowledgement, as a prayer, and we can do it for a few minutes in silence, or not even a few minutes, but for just a short time in silence. And as we acknowledge the land that we're on, the traditional stewards of the land, or historical stewards of the land, it's a prayer that we can also honor the planet and honor and remember what transpired. And I see Tara Atherley. I also want to, I like to do this lately on calls. I heard it done before and it felt really good. And so, like so many people in this moment have died because of COVID. And also in this moment, we are challenging police violence and state-sanctioned violence, which is about murder. And because of COVID, how do we actually honor and put to rest those who um, have been murdered or died because of COVID? Um, and so I like to firstly call in our ancestors and then call into um, this room those who have been killed by police or died of COVID. And I want to call in my grandma Goldie. And I'm just going to step back and light a candle and light some sage. I've been thinking quite a bit about Harriet Tubman, and who's a high ancestor. And I want to honor my Uncle Eugene and my Grandma Goldie. So at this point, if folks want to unmute and also name ancestors, and then we'll come back and name folks who haven't had a chance to be prayed over and mourned and eulogized in our traditions. So feel free to unmute and call out a name.
John Lewis.
Ashe. C.T. Vivian.
Fabi Joyner.
Ashe. All right. George Floyd, Breonna Taylor,
Tina Davis.
Ashe.
Oscar Grant.
Tamir Rice,
Ashe.
Corinne Gaines,
Ashe.
Huey P. Newton, Fred Hampton,
Ashe.
David Toma, Penobscot, shot in the back by police.
Ashe.
Tony McDade.
Ashe.
Eric Gardner.
Ashe.
Michael Brown.
Ashe.
Amadou Diallo.
Ashe.
Sandra Bland.
Ashe.
Idris Stelly.
Ashe.
Emmett Till.
Ashe.
Valentina Black Horse, Navajo.
Ashe. So let's maybe have a moment of silence if there are no more. Ashe, ashe, ashe. Ashe. I think our work going forward is to honor those lives that have been martyred, some willingly, many unwillingly, even with COVID. So it's exciting to be on this call with everyone, and we're gonna introduce ourselves, but for this event, I'll be speaking, and LJM, who's a board member of the Truth Telling Project and co-founder of Speakeasy Go Hard movement in Washington, D.C. And LJ is a dope, amazing organizer who focuses on using art and education to uplift her community. And LJM, if you want to say a little bit more about yourself, and we'll both be responding to the prompts. What is meant by defunding police? And I'll put them in the chat. What work is being done, or what are we doing? What's the role for all of us in this? And what's the vision for a society without police? So I'll put that here. And just as the way this program will go is LJM will talk, I will talk, and then we'll have a few minutes, like if folks want to throw out a few questions. And then after the questions, we'll go into breakout rooms and come back after the conversation, have a couple of announcements, and a closing reflection by Shirley, and that'll be it. So LJM, happy birthday, by the way.
Thank you.
Everyone, like, let's just be like super excited because today is LJM's birthday. So I just want to sing a little happy birthday to you. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday. Happy. Join in. Birthday. Happy birthday.
Yay, happy birthday. Thank you. Thank you. I appreciate all of the love. That was a great introduction, David. One, I just want to say I'm honored and privileged to even be able to be a part of this phone call, to even discuss something as important as defunding the police, and really just delving into that topic and giving educational background around it, simply because it's not spoken of and there's so many myths circling around this. So one, I just want to say thank you, and it's an honor to be here. I look forward to answering all questions, and really hoping that I can add some enlightenment around this topic. As Dave had pointed out, I am the founder of Speakeasy Go Hard, which is a movement located in Washington, D.C. And Speakeasy basically provides conflict resolution to victims of violence through the use of art therapy, AKA we are trauma relief for the hood and for communities that really experience violence, continuously due to the fact that poverty is terrorism, as well as due to the brainwashing and conditioning that we experience from growing up in an environment with a lack of resources.
So, do you want to respond to the questions in the chat?
Yes.
Okay, perfect.
Yes, I totally can. All right, it's that time. So basically, when we speak of what is defunding the police, right? A lot of people get confused around that because they think that means instantly disbanding the police, breaking police up, and no longer having police. However, in a lot of terms, when it comes to defunding the police, that really means divesting from the police and taking away from the budget and allocating some of those funds to other government entities and agencies. So for example, in Speakeasy, what we did is that we partnered with other organizations as well as Truth Telling Project to have a protest around defunding the police on June 26th. And what we were asking for is because currently the police department in Washington, D.C., they have a $578 million budget. And we had hearings on the 16th where over 20,000 DC residents went and asked people to defund the police, at least by 50%, to invest that money into youth programs, violence intervention, mentoring programs, as well as other community organizations that will allow people to produce from and not simply consume from, right? Because if we invest in our communities and we provide them with resources, then they remove themselves from that survival mode to where violence and crime will go down. If you invest in the communities, crime will go down. However, when you see things along those lines, even after we had 20,000 people going in and say, defund the police by 50%, what the council did is that they released and said, oh, we'll cut the increase to the police budget by $15 million. Well, for those of you who aren't quick with math, or as they like to do in a lot of times, they like to throw out big numbers, right? And when they throw out big numbers, they don't give you a basis of comparison. So really deducting or just cutting $15 million from a $578 million budget, that's less than 3% of the budget. We're asking for 50%. So when you see things like that, you have to be careful of the numbers. So when we go in and ask to defund, we're asking for some of that budget to be reallocated to other government entities that once again can pour back the community. Did I have any questions on what I said about that? No? Are we good? Okay. All right. Clear. Everyone said clear. Okay. And so basically, like I said, what work is being done, or what work are we doing? Well, for those of you that don't know, right now the work that we really need to focus on is not having symbolic victories, right? When it comes to symbolic victories, as Malcolm X said, they will give us symbolic victories, but no real economic equity and no real justice. So right now what we're faced with is a symbolic victory. It's similar to Black Lives Matter being spray painted on the ground. So as you saw in DC, Meryl Bowser, she went and she spray painted Black Lives Matter on the ground. She got local artists, dope artists, to come out and to push for that. Artists that are in the community and known for being in the community. So it can come off as, oh yes, ride or die for the community. We see real change. But in the same day, she went to increase that police budget. And if you didn't know, only 30 out of 37 states that have written down Black Lives Matter, only one has truly moved to abolish or defund the police completely, and that is Minneapolis. If I have to be stand corrected in this kind of moment, someone let me know. But last I checked, it was Minneapolis. So out of those 37 states who are spray painting Black Lives Matter, that is simply just a symbolic victory. So what we need, the type of work that we're looking for, is the same as to what Speakeasy and how we partner with Howard Law to do this. We have a petition. So we're going through the proper channels of mobilization to get people to understand what defunding the police means, as well as to sign the petition so they can show, like, look, this is what we're looking for. And as far as coming to a world with no police, I'm not going to sit here and be naive and say that crime does not exist, right? And a lot of people think that defunding the police means that you won't see those red and blue lights anymore. That's not the case. because the point is that we still need tactical units to deal with these types, with violent crimes. We need that. I think we can all agree to that we need something that will deal with violent crimes. The point is that violent crimes, with a lot of research that I've studied, for example, in Cleveland, less than 2% of police responses are to severe violent crimes out of the thousands of phone calls that they get daily. Most of those do not relate to violent crimes such as homicide and things along those lines. So when we look at that, it's really about reforming and reimagining what the police department looks like. I think in a time such as today, especially with COVID, especially with how our entire lives throughout this pandemic have been reimagined. People are working from home. Kids are starting to get schooled from home. People are now, they're doing more outdoor activities like going camping or going boating if they have that privilege, right? So people are starting to try to figure out a new way of life that was outside of the norm to which we had. So I would like to push for everyone to continue to reimagine what will this world look like, where we will then include the BIPOC population as well as everyone else in this time. So with that being said, I think it's really important for us to take this time to reimagine what the world looks like, because when police originally were created, they were originally created to catch slaves and to bring slaves back from up north down south. That's why the police were originally created. So really looking into what it can mean to reimagine police so that they can be strategically placed in position to deal with what they really need to be dealing with, instead of mental health training, or not mental health training, but instead of mental health cases, because a lot of cases that they deal with is behind mental health, and they may not have that proper training in that moment to deal with a situation or even be able to identify what's happening and what's going on. So I think now is the time, as I've said, is really just a point to reimagine, come together as a collective, as collective organizations, and have that dialogue to understand, what do we need? Do we really need more police in neighborhoods? Is that over-policing? What message are we sending when the fact that in Black neighborhoods, police sit there, but in white neighborhoods, police are called, right? We really have to start delving into that concept and understanding, why is it okay for there to be a mobile camera sitting outside in a Black community trying to push high crime rate, but yet we don't have that same safety mechanism being used in white neighborhoods or in uptown and Northwest with the rich? Why do we not see the same type of situation being plagued? And they say it's because of crime, but we really have to take a deep dive into, well, what is crime caused from? Why is crime happening? And even probably straying from point when they say, well, Black people kill Black people all the time. What's the difference? Why are we pushing for police to stop killing us when Black people kill Black people on a regular basis? Again, we have to remember the privilege, one, that we apply when we think about a situation. And we have to understand that most crime takes place because people are coming from a place of survival, a place of a need, a place of where they feel, I have to do this in order to survive. And when you're functioning from a place of survival, that moral capacity is not in place. I don't know if anyone on here has ever been hungry. And when I say hungry, I mean, you don't know where your next meal is coming from. You have to pay your rent. You have no idea where that rent's coming from. And you have kids looking at you. Or you haven't eaten. You have a bad meal because you live in a food desert, in a literacy desert, because all they're doing in the bodegas are selling chips and sugary juice. You can't find okra or eggplants anywhere. You have to travel 20 minutes uptown to get to a World Food Market or to get to a Harris Teeter. You have to do these things, or you have to take a long bus commute. So can you really lug all of those groceries back? It's a lot of variables and layers that play into saying like, oh, well, these high crime rates, so you can't just say that. So I made that point to just be mindful that there are so many variables that come into constant play and constant implementation that we have to take into consideration in order to produce a very, very real solution. I see I have a question here, so I'll get there. I'll come to the next question about what the vision looks like. But a question that we had from Anne is, do you think the recent creation of a kind of natural police force, such as the one in Portland, made up of the Coast Guard Customs, and Border Protection, TSA, and ICE are a reaction to calls to defund the police. Some are observing this as a move towards creating a national police force to manage civil disobedience and rioting near federal buildings, etc. Well, again, my response to that is we have to understand what they mean by protect and serve, right? Who are they protecting? Who are they serving? Most of the time they are protecting and serving capitalism, i.e. the federal buildings to which you said, right? They're really protecting business and corporation interests versus actually protecting and providing safety to the mass population. So no, when it comes to quote unquote nationalizing the police, if anything, they're still implementing militarization tactics on civilians. So what I mean by that is that we speak about defunding the police so that there can be no more military arms sent to the police, and there can stop being a militarization of the police in the first place. So moving forward to use the Coast Guard and Border Protection and TSA and ICE, that is the complete opposite to what we're asking for. And that's why they say that white supremacy groups have infiltrated these certain entities as here right now, simply because of the tactics that they are using. Even when we were down, David and I, when we were down at the Love Knows Borders protest down in Mexico, you saw plainclothes dressed people posing to be ICE. So you see these things. So that's why I don't agree to that, because again, is it the proper training? Do they have the proper cultural engagement, so to speak, to even interact with these people? And that's the other thing. A lot of police officers that come into Black communities, they're not even from that community. They are from different communities. So therefore, they don't understand what's happening. They don't understand why Jaquan is going through the situation to which he's going through. They don't understand what Ray Ray's past is and what's happening. So when you are having people who conflict culturally come into a place and they don't understand the culture, then a lot of things there is going to be reactionary too. So yes, you do see a lot of reactionary tactics versus proactive tactics. First and foremost, no one exerting their First Amendment right should ever be met with tear gas, police brutality, or with curfews. That's absurd. That's absurd. Point blank, period. It's absurd and it doesn't make sense. So no, I don't agree with that. And I hope I answered your question. They said there was an instance of rioting in Portland early on in a protest that has been used as an excuse to suppress ongoing peaceful protests. Let's be very clear, right? In a world where you are protesting against one that is in power, everything is going to come off antagonistic. Everything is going to seem as if you are attacking something, because you are. You're literally trying to go in and restructure a power dynamic that has been in place for so long. So yes, of course, you're going to come off as you're attacking it. You technically are attacking it, regardless if you're being peaceful or if you're not being peaceful. And as MLK said, riots are the voice of the unheard. So how long has the Black community been going through these brutal attacks? How long has different parties and of the government have been utilizing racial justice for their agenda? So let's be clear about that. Let's be very clear about George Floyd and how his death has been being utilized for a particular agenda. What agenda now? We can guess about that all day. But let's be extremely clear. They are trying to utilize this man's death for an agenda, similar to, as you're saying, the intense rhyme for ongoing peaceful protests. When you think about Chaz in Seattle, that entire community that has started, and they're starting to do this, they're relying on selves. They're relying on bringing in their own supplies and patrolling themselves. That right there is an example that they don't want you to know, because Chaz has not been in the media as much as it should be, because a lot of people are upset about the fact that the police even abandoned that entire area in the first place. They said that's a mistake. They're criticizing Seattle's governor as we speak for even allowing something like that to happen, because that legitimately is a win to the people. The same way how Assata Shakur mere existence is an affront and offensive to the government right now, because she got away, because They tried to throw her in jail and make her an example, and they wronged her and said that she killed a police officer, even in those times where we know that Blacks were not being treated correctly, even today. We know this. So even understanding the propaganda and the story and the narratives that are being pushed in order to make the masses think something, to think one way, we have to pay attention to that. As Tupac said, the media is full of dirty tricks. So we have to understand what's being posed to us and what's not being posed to us, because they will flip the narrative in order for us to think like, oh no, this is what's happening. The same with all those police shows on TV. That's propaganda. It's propaganda to make you believe that police are doing good and doing justice. But half of the cases that you see in those police TV shows, that doesn't happen. That's really not going on. To be 100% honest, it's not happening. So that's why you have to start thinking. And that's why I say, if you pay anything, pay attention. Pay attention to what's going on. Pay attention so that you can be informed, but you're not being influenced. The next question that we have here is, what is the vision for a society without police? Again, it's funny because all law enforcement officers, if you all didn't know this, all law enforcement officers are called peace officers. That's why if you look in any document or any bill, they are referred to as peace officers. Meaning that they are supposed to come in and they are supposed to keep the peace. The same way how if they go and they respond to a domestic violence dispute or confrontation happening, they're not really allowed to infiltrate or to do anything in that moment, because they are really there to try to defuse the situation and to maintain the peace. But the reason why is, again, you have to dive into what happened. When prison became private, again, I repeat, when prison became private, that's when we started seeing a lot of these targeted practices. And that's when we started seeing a lot of these increased incarceration, so to speak, simply because the state made a deal with the private prisons that if they don't fill those beds, then you get smacked with a bill. Money is dished out. So again, we're back in a position where they are trading people for profit in order to make quotas and in order to do things. So now the police officer, this person who is quote unquote being viewed as a monster, who's really just trying to pay bills because they too are trying to avoid poverty. They too are trying to keep food on the table. They then get put into a position. And that's why we come up with all of this strife and all of this back and forth when it comes to defunding the police. But the same way how I believe it was 75 police officers quit their job because of those police officers who pushed down that old man in New York when and got in trouble, is the same way that police officers can sit there and say, you know what those police officers did to George Floyd is wrong, and they can quit their jobs because they stand on that moral principle. Everyone else can do that. So the same way that if those police quit their jobs and they created this security tactical team within their neighborhoods to protect their neighborhoods, how much closer will we get to that? So I think, to answer the question, the reimagining of the vision for the police is really producing peace officers who are trained in mental health tactics, producing peace officers who are trained culturally and emotionally and have high emotional intelligence, and they know how to enter into a situation and turn it back. Having peace officers who understand that not to use quick judgment to take away someone's life. I think is really reimagining and looking at each community's needs and having a curtailed peace officer force that will apply to those needs of that community. This is not a cookie cutter situation. The things happening in Detroit are completely different. That's what's happening in Washington, D.C. What's happening in Washington, D.C. can be totally different to what's happening in Columbia, South Carolina. What's going on in Oakland, California can be different than what they are experiencing in Mobile, Alabama. So I hope you all understand what I'm saying to that about is really about curtailing, and as we say in the teaching world, creating those differentiation plans that can really help the particular community in question, but not sitting there and giving us false numbers and large numbers to try to show that some type of change is happening when there's no change. we really have to shut down symbolic victories and truly continue to push for true economic equity, really push for legislation that defends Black life, and not pushing for legislation such as qualified immunity that defends government officials who can violate your constitutional rights unless it has been defined by the courts that they have broken clearly established law. So really going into those things to really push for legislation that defends Black life, I think is our next step.
Hey, thank you.
Thank you. I hope I've answered everyone's questions.
And I'm gonna just share a few things. LJM, you did an excellent job, and I don't have much to say. I just want to share a little bit about like abolition of police. I think it's like people use it interchangeably with defunding the police, and it's really about getting rid of white supremacist institutions that don't value Black lives, like what LJM was saying. And it extends to to the structures that aren't about people in policing, as well as prisons, and also the mentality, not just of police, but all of the Beckys and Karens out there, and Jacks who call the police on Black folk. And you know, it's not just white people who are calling the police. It's like the way settler colonialism works, or how colonization works, is we're taught to be afraid of each other, and in particular, be afraid of Black lives. You know, what people don't know is the person who called the police on George Floyd was Palestinian. He's a Palestinian corner store. And if people don't know how, you know, people are allowed to come into communities and are taught by this system to devalue Black folk. So it's nothing against Palestinians. It's against this system that turns people on each other. And like right across the street from my parents' house, Kajimi Powell was killed a few days after Mike Brown was killed. Similar situation. It was a corner store owned by an Arab family, and they called the police on him as well. But then there are other situations. We found out about the Starbucks person calling the police. So I think the one of the core issues is that we've I think exported what should be the creation of right relationships with each other to a group that is not trained to have any kind of relationship except for power over, and that's it. You know, what I want to share is that you know, before and during Ferguson, we hope that cameras and retraining and dialogue, calls to demilitarize the police, and that communities might be able to reform things a little bit. And we saw that, you know, people were still, you know, getting killed with the video and still not being held accountable. In 2017, a police officer had killed an African-American man in St. Louis. And he had said that the man had a gun. He pursued this man during a high speed chase. When they found him, the police officer placed his own additional weapon on the man. Even though they did an entire DNA sample of this gun, and the only DNA like on the inside of the gun was from the police. The police officer had been taking the gun apart and cleaning it, so they found his DNA in it, and the police officer asked for a bench trial without a jury, and the judge let him go. And so, like, so even there, like with all of the evidence, like we see an entire system lined up against Black life. And so that's the court system. And like LJM was saying, like, and the rise of private prisons have fueled filling those numbers. Like if you think about the connection between schools and policing, or the school to prison pipeline, you know, we were looking at statistics that show that you can tell by third grade test scores how many prison beds will be built. And so how do you get those kids from schools into jails, right? Through school resource officers. So yes, like in the article, like we write about the importance of, like, you know, not spending money on police. Like, for instance, new NYPD's budget is $6 billion. And they've been found to like, and only I think 2 police officers actually were found responsible for murdering people in the past 30 years. And so like we see that the mentality of the policing system is not just in the police, but it's in the citizenry, who are convinced by politicians who say, look, I'm a tough on crime, like, you know, vote for me because I'm going to make you safe. And then police are responding to that mentality by lobbying with police unions, which virtually go untouched. I've never seen a union that doesn't have to negotiate. And with the way that unions have been under attack in the United States, police are not, police unions have not been under attack until the recent upsurge for the movement for Black Lives. And, you know, it's not just the police, it's also the military. Like, we spend our money on the wrong things, on things that do not reinforce our humanity. And so there's a global, like, network that's rooted in the disrespect of non-white life, BIPOC folks, and Black life. And, you know, I'm glad that you said peace officer, because I don't know how police officers can use violence to make peace, you know? And so, like, you know, I think that there's so many other possibilities. And so in 2016, a number of us went to Jennings, Missouri. We in the Truth Telling Project, we targeted that town because it's right next to Ferguson, and that was the police department that Darren Wilson came from, and that department was disbanded. And we went to them because it was disbanded, and they were about to come up on the anniversary to decide whether they were gonna get a whole new police department, because the St. Louis County had then taken over sort of policing, coming if there was a problem or something like that. And what we proposed to them was doing something different. So that we would start with not necessarily hiring any new police, and begin with hiring more social workers, violence de-escalators, restorative justice practitioners. And we also propose that we would try to figure out how to bring the community together and create relationships among each other, or help them create relationships. And so one of the ways that we proposed is by creating a gardening program. When I lived in Toledo, there was a program called Toledo Grows, and it was for teenagers, BIPOC, Black, Indigenous, and other people of color, communities, youth who would get paid to garden, and community members had shares throughout, so that and that would be facilitated by restorative justice practitioners who would also teach violence de-escalation. So we're dealing with some of the underlying issues that LJM described, which is food deserts, lack of community, lack of certain kinds of training and knowledge. Especially since food is the basis for like community survival and people's survival. And so in addition, we share like so many different communities that are doing things that don't require policing. After Kashmir Powell got killed, I remember standing outside and talking with people from my neighborhood, my family's neighborhood, and somebody said to me, he was like, "Yo, we haven't always relied on or needed the police. So when we re-envision, all we have to do is look to lessons of the past." And they described how like often police had like kind of like understandings with communities that if there's a problem, you go see the community elder, or there in many communities, how did these communities actually survive? How do people survive in them already? Like in communities that are occupied or have like, or during the crack epidemic, because there's always been what we call mediating institutions, like Auntie Jim's candy shop, like places where people could go and be protected and supported. For me, that was Brother Joe's barbershop, right down the street from my house. I could always go and talk to Brother Joe. So the examples are there. When we talk about violent crimes, like violence against women, for instance, Angela Davis in her book talked about how in the 60s and 70s in Oakland, Black men policed the neighborhood to prevent abuse and violence against Black women. It's been done, it's being done. When I grew up in St. Louis, the Nation of Islam community patrolled the streets, literally walking up and down the streets in the hood. In addition, Richmond, California, for instance, had one of the highest murder rates in the United States. And they reduced their murder rate. There's a Mother Jones article about it if you want to Google it. They reduced their murder rate because the mayor and the city council and police decided to open their records and see like people who had arrested and who they thought were likely to commit a crime, and they targeted them with opportunities and jobs, like LJM described. Just recently in COVID, Minneapolis, Minnesota created a robust mutual aid network to take care of their needs, right? In Detroit, there's a food justice network of Detroit providing food for the community. So when we talk about re-envisioning a world without the police, we talk about re-envisioning without a mentality that we need to be policed. And where there's repair happening. And I think reparations is part of that. Like there has to be reparations for community, and that looks multidimensional and it's connected because in Chicago, John Burge ran a torture chamber for over 3 decades where African Americans were tortured. And it's one of the largest cases of reparations where African Americans were paid reparations for torture in this community. And they were able to create a torture justice center and put education in schools. And so like, if we talk about reimagining, we have to talk about divesting and reinvesting, and divesting mentalities from our mind that require us to believe that we need somebody to come and take care of our problems. And demands help us to like solidify it, but we can do it by gathering together in community and taking care of our needs. And so I think that's it. That's all I had. And I think we're gonna have time for discussion. Amy, do you wanna take that away, or I can do that if you want me to. Are there any questions that we might want? That's right, the Black Panthers.
Sure. So thanks, David. Thanks, LJM. Do we have questions? Do we want to go immediately into breakout groups, or do we want to take a moment for questions?
Yeah, let's take a moment if there are questions and follow up to what we both said.
So while people are kind of gathering their thoughts, I just want to say that we have been breaking into breakout groups in this in this series as a way to just give people a chance to dialogue about the presentation. And you know, it could be that through that process you'll generate some additional questions. We've got one here from Gabby. How does a community protection patrol get organized? Or do you have recommendations of resources for learning about this?
You know, so, you know, just recently, you know, one of our organizers in St. Louis got her car shot up, and people on our block came to her and was like, yo, what's up? So they began looking out for each other, like as basic as that. Basic as talking to your neighbors about what you need and what's required. And I think we make it really difficult because, you know, you got like these community liaison folks from the police who like come in and tell us like, here, I'll help you organize a block and you be the block captain. We don't need all that. You know, we people are naturally empathetic. If you touch somebody or next to somebody, you care about them. If you're in the same room. And like our society has done a lot to separate us from each other. And so like one of the basic things is like coming back together and sitting in a circle.
I agree with David. It is that simple. Alice Walker said, the greatest way to take away someone's power is to make them believe that they don't have any. So the fact is that the power lies within the people. And we as the people, we have to start taking that instead of looking to government officials, instead of looking to the problem to save us. That's not going to happen. So just really echoing David's sentiments that he just said, it's about asking those questions. It's about stepping up and saying, hey, what's going on here? How can I help? Understanding how you can help instead of trying to insert yourself in some situations. Sometimes that help may not be needed, but that's again about being culturally aware and culturally engaged with what is going on, asking those questions, being empathetic and understanding the right from wrong and not just standing there, but doing something.
Where I was just thinking about something. Rabbi Lynn said that, real quick, LJM has to go, but is there a link for people who would like to support your work at Speakeasy Go Hard?
Yes, there is a link. What I can do is I can pop that in the chat right here. So if you are on Instagram, because we're currently only functioning via Instagram, you can totally follow us. If anyone is interested, we are having our event this 4th Friday. It's a Zoom call. Dave will be guest speaking, and we will be speaking about this topic and how we can come together to continue to abolish qualified immunity within the district. So,
and just so people know for sure, LJM is working on a campaign with Howard Law School, Thurgood Marshall Center on ending qualified immunity and working with Justin Hansford. They've been reviewing some of the bills that went through Congress to try to put together a bill for DC.
Yes, exactly. So, no, I just want to say thank you again to everyone. Thank you for allowing me this space to come on and to speak and to discuss. I appreciate everyone. I hope I've enlightened a few people. If you all have any questions, anything, please don't hesitate. You can follow up with me. That'll be great. But thank you so much, everyone. I hope you all have a wonderful day. And remember, if you pay anything, please pay attention.
Ashe.
Ashe. Peace, guys.
Great. So David, should we go ahead and do breakout rooms? So do you have any particular questions you want people to consider? Like maybe one of the ones that you had put in earlier? I'm just going to scroll back up and locate it.
Sure. Real quick, I want to lift up Homeboy Industry that Rabbi Lamb put in, which is definitely a model of transformation in communities. And it started with elder women's street presence. I think is really like, how do we envision a society without policing? And for folks who like Mark, who, you know, we've done imaging or prefer future thinking, what is a future without police? You know, can we open our minds to think about what that might look like for your own community? Like maybe, and I would like for us to maybe engage in an exercise in the call where we, as soon as we jump into the, you don't have to do this, but this is a suggestion. You know, what does it look like? What will it look like a day that you wake up, say 2, 3, 4, 5 years from now, without policing? What does the news headline look like? Right? What are people writing about? So I'd encourage us to envision that as we break out into our groups.
And could I just tack on one question in addition, is what is our role in bringing this about?
Yeah, what did you do to get that headline?
Yeah.
What was your part in it?
Okay. So there's some written version of that for the visual folks amongst us. And I'm gonna just send you all into breakout rooms. You will have to like click on the thing that says join breakout room. And then should we take, David, 20 minutes or 15? 15 minutes, okay? And then we'll call you back, all right? Thanks, everybody. Here we go. So I think, I don't know about you guys, but my conversation was really good. And so I lost track of time a little bit. So I want to say sorry about that because it's now a few minutes before 6:30. I hope everybody else had good conversations too. And Shirley, are you want to lead us through a little bit of a debrief?
And before Shirley does that, I just want to encourage people to, if you all can, to support the work of the Street Selling Project. Right now, we're doing a campaign where we're trying to raise $25,000 for our work on protest policy, education, and reparations. And so here's a link, 2 links. One is the campaign, and then one is you can donate directly to our fiscal sponsor, and you'll get a tax, it's tax deductible.
Okay. Thank you so much, David. Thank you, everyone, and thank you to all the speakers. And so thank you for joining us on this on this series, and especially today, and being open to having these conversations. I'm not going to call on groups. So I have a member, in case you forget which group you are in, I'm just going to call out a member of your group, and then everybody in that group can decide who they had chosen to do the report back, and then we could do that. So the first group, group one, had Gabby in the group. So Gabby's group, do you guys have a report back person?
I think, Gabby, you're muted.
Go ahead, Gabby.
I don't know if I feel comfortable reporting back. Is anyone else? I didn't realize we were doing report back.
I can report back. We had, we didn't really talk about the question of envisioning what it looked like. We sort of talked a little bit about the past, and we talked about, where did Amy go? Amy? Did we lose Amy? We talked about some things that we had remembered from the past, about some things that are going on in our own context, and about some ways in which we can start using the frame, I think, that Amy was talking about, of abolition and democracy, which I would love to know a little bit more about. And we felt like we just didn't have enough time to really talk about the question, I think, because we're all trying to figure out what's happening in our own country. Swing said quite a bit about how it's odd to try to figure out what the future is going to look like if we continue to frame the discussion about that in the current way that we talk about the police now, which I thought was a really good point.
I guess we talked a bit about like how to balance the need to think about these big visions for the future with the need to like push against the power that the police have now, sort of in the opportunities that we have now right in front of us. And yeah, where to put your energy.
Thank you, guys. Thank you for that report back. And next, we're gonna have anybody from David's group who wants to do a report back. And I also just want to say, like, as a member of the Truth Telling Project, we have ongoing conversations about defunding the police and about police reform. So if you would like to be on our mailing list, please let us know and we'll add you. So David, I think we lost David, but who was on David's group that wants to do a report back?
Where's the group?
Terry,
This was group 2.
Terry, you're muted.
Hi, sorry about that. I'm Tara, and we spent some time, I guess, envisioning individually what it would be like to wake up and to read the newspaper headline that the police has been defunded. And then we had a discussion about that. And I guess we talked less about tangible outcomes and more about the process of sacrifice that has been made, that must be made, difficulties with timelines. Our ancestors had to wait 400 years for us to have this conversation. And so how much longer we have to wait and what we do in the meantime, whether we're taking active steps or whether we're in the visioning process. And I don't know if there's anything else that you would like to add. Nikin?
Oh. No, like I'm going to say what I said in the group. I just have so many questions. It's such a huge open, and I just started scratching the surface and asking questions that I'm sad that I have to come back so soon.
I think a few things David mentioned were emergent strategies, the power of storytelling, and the necessity of people supporting each other through that process.
Thank you, guys. Mary Ann. So Mary Ann's group, or Mary Ann would like to report back.
I'll just say one thing and let Joyce and Matthew fill in some more. But I think several of our parts of our conversation revolved around creating the community opportunities and supports that would be needed to be able to get to a point where the police weren't a significant force, and that would be something that we want to work on. How that undergirds everything. So people can help each other and can help protect the community. So Matthew and Joyce, you can add other things or jump in somewhere else.
Matt wants to. Yeah, I was just gonna say, yeah, the idea, or just the if people are supported and have healthcare and have mental health support and have and are not in and are less in poverty or not in poverty, it would be it would go a long way towards ending the need for police. I don't, you know.
I agree.
Yeah. Well, I mean, ending the need for, well, not need, but ending police. You know.
The only other thing that I would add was talking about connecting to the criminal justice system and jails, and that there would be no need for.
I'm talking to you while you're on the phone with someone.
Interruption. Yeah. Right. That there would be some form of restorative justice for the people that actually need the help. So I would just add that. Thank you.
Thank you for that, guys. And the next group is Kitty's group. That was group 4. Kitty, is Kitty there? Okay, so maybe we'll come back to them. And then let's try group 5, which is Rabbi Lynn's group. Rabbi Lynn, do you want to report back?
Would anyone like to share? We mostly talked about different efforts that we're already engaged in. What's happening in Maine and Virginia, Richmond in particular, out here in Berkeley, Oakland.
I can share.
And in Stony Point, so we kind of did a mapping of what's going on right now and how we're each engaged in present efforts to defund, and the need for more concrete rather than symbolic, the removal of the statues being more symbolic, and actual defunding being more specific. And anyone else's, and I also mentioned that there's just a lot of generational wisdom out there, and that has a long history, and just thinking about how to make some of that accessible to all of us, so that we don't feel like we're starting from scratch, but we can kind of map and accumulate and have a data bank, and just really gather in all the wisdom that is out there from people who've been working on this issue for so long, and what successful models are out there to share. And I invite Dawn or Chloe and Rick to add to that.
I just covered what was pretty much happening here in Virginia, which was one of the more conservative states compared to the others. Although we do have a Democratic governor, we're fairly purple when it comes to the House and the Senate. We do have, and I'm not sure if other states have, a special session coming up. Our General Assembly session was in January. And so there's some bills that passed, but the budgets got paused that legislators have to review. They're also looking at COVID-19 interventions. And then the Virginia Legislative Black Caucus also has their special session policy agenda. And other more liberal organizations will be advocating for different things around defunding the police, removing police in schools, increasing funding to social services, et cetera. So I think it's the opportunity for the grassroots advocates to really get involved in activism at the state level through policy intervention. There are some solid things that they can support. So there was a call on social media for all the organizers to get together and for advocates to make themselves visible during special session, which will still be in person here in Virginia.
Thank you, guys. So let's turn back to Kitty's group. Would anybody from Kitty's group like to report back? Or anybody who you feel your group hasn't reported back? I would like to say something.
I can.
Sure, go ahead.
I mean, a lot of what our group touched on was already covered, but something I think Sarah mentioned was working on identifying things within ourselves that contribute to a culture of policing. And I wish she could speak to exactly what she had said, because she put it so beautifully. But the way I related to it was like killing the cop in your head. And Roxanne had mentioned that it's easy to imagine. It's easier to imagine this other future than it is to imagine the steps to get there. And I guess putting those pieces together, perhaps partially the cop in the head that makes it difficult to imagine those steps. But since the policing has a vested interest in perpetuating itself. We talked a little bit about food sovereignty and getting to the root of what creates, quote, violent crime that needs policing, and then also touched a bit on the alternative programs and agencies that could be funded in place of police, like David mentioned about restorative justice practices, community gardens, and whatnot. If anyone else from my group is still here, I'd love to hear anything else I missed. Nope, I think they all left. That is all.
Great. Thank you so much, everybody. Shirley, are you there?
Yes, sorry. Sometimes it's hard to like unmute. I'm here. Thank you so much, everyone. Thank you for sharing, and thank you for coming and joining us. So I think, Amy, are you doing the closing?
Sure, yeah, I can, first I just wanna, Hi, Gabby. Should we just read Gabby's really quick?
Yeah, go ahead.
You want to read it, Gabby? Oh, wait, you're muted.
Yeah, another thing we talked about is the idea of envisioning a world where when there's a mental health or homelessness crisis, there's some entity to call besides the police that actually knows how to deal with those situations. And people mention a lot of nonprofit organizations that exist in some cities that people can call on to respond in these situations, or even sometimes the police ask those entities to go out and do the work when it's a mental health issue or a homelessness crisis. And these can be an inspiration for what we would want to see, but they should be getting the kind of funding police get and not, the low nonprofit salaries that they probably do get now.
Is there somebody, Matt?
Oh, I just wanted to say one other thing. I was talking with Marianne and an article that I just read recently. I thought it was helpful. It's called "Confessions of a Former Bastard Cop," and I'm going to post it. And I think it's really helpful in just like sharing with especially sharing with folks that might be have like cops in their family or things like that.
Wow.
So anyway.
Nikin, were you did you try to say something? I'm not sure if I'm saying your name right. I thought maybe you were raising your hand.
Yeah, she's not, she's muted.
Oh, you're muted? No? Oh, she's good. Okay. Okay, great. Thank you. Before we totally close, I just want to mention that we're doing another session next week, which is a book reading group on the book Emergent Strategy by Adrienne Marie Brown. And I'll stick the URL about it in your chat in just a minute. And actually, this is the second discussion group on this book that we've done. The first time we basically looked at the introduction, which is a pretty lengthy introduction. And this time we're gonna look at the first 3 sections where she goes into, there's like 6 principles of emergent strategy. Just a minute, sweetie. And we're gonna go over the first 3. So it's like basically like, yeah, I can't remember. But anyway, it says on the details on here, so I'll put that in there for you. It's a wonderful book. And so please consider joining us if you would like to. So as we move to close, I guess I just want to kind of bring us to that moment where we were discussing the need to dismantle the cop in the head, and just sort of focusing in on that need that we all have, and like just asking the transcendent spirit that flows amongst us to help this conversation be a seasoning for that process, and help it continue and continue to season that process that we are all going through. May it be so. Thank you, everybody.
I need to run to the next meeting.
Bye-bye. You want to say bye, Beth?
Thank you, everyone. Bye.
Bye.
Bye, Bessam.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone, for organizing.
Oh, it's the red bird. Yay.
I need to run to that meeting.
Okay. Ah.
This one has
Bye,
wings.
Mary